I've heard quite a bit of talk coming up to the adaptation of Tokyo Revengers, and so I was a little bit excited to see this adaptation. I'm now 2 episodes into the series. It's a series, of course, that is airing in the spring 2021 season, but here's my thoughts on it so far. Tokyo Revengers follows a guy named Takemichi. At the very beginning, we see that he's watching a news report, and he finds out that his childhood girlfriend from when he was in middle school has recently been involved in an accident involving the Tokyo Manji gang and has died. Now, him being an adult, it's been some time since he's in middle school, and he kind of just like, wow, that sucks. And then he goes about his life. And as you find out, he doesn't really have a very fun life. He's constantly being, talked down to by his coworkers, constantly apologizing. He even gets bullied by little kids in the street. And at some point, when he goes to a train station, he gets knocked off the platform into the path of a train. And even though, that would be the end of his life, he finds himself waking up in middle school. And he's like, he's not sure if this is a dream or not, but he knows what's going to happen. He ends up walking with his friends. And then at some point, they get beat up by essentially the beginnings of the Manji gang. And following this, he decides, I'm going to go see my girlfriend from middle school. So he rushes over to her house, ends up seeing her and realizing, kind of upset at the idea that she's gone. And then later on, he ends up bumping into her brother. And he doesn't know that it's her brother off the bat, but he protects him against some bullies and then ends up telling her brother, look, at this point, your sister's going to die, you're going to die, and I'm going to die. Kind of just laying out to this boy that, well, it's going to happen in the future and to prevent it and to protect his sister. And as they kind of reach a truce and they go to shake hands, Takemichi ends up finding himself back in the future again, and he's not dead. Well, come to find out, 12 years later from that point, her brother ends up saving his life. He's like, yeah, you told me and I went and saved your life, but I wasn't able to save my sister, and you're able to time travel. So at this point, we are establishing that we are going to be time traveling multiple times. This is not just a jump back into history and kind of relive your life. It's more of a kind of segmented time travel. And it's all being triggered by apparently them shaking hands. I'm not sure exactly how the brother figures this out. Like, oh yeah, obviously it's us shaking hands that makes you travel. So let's do it again. Time travel again. But what this ended up turning into is essentially Takemichi and Naoto, who Naoto is his girlfriend's brother, working together to time travel to undo this travesty, to undo this girl being killed. And it all seems to center around the Manji gang. And like I mentioned earlier, it seems to be the beginnings of this Manji gang is back when he was in middle school. And he has to figure out a way of somehow either keeping the gang from being created or just to stop this girl's death. And he kind of is getting a lot of resolve to do this as he is, of course, re-meeting this girl and how much she wants to protect him and how, kind-hearted she is. And that's essentially the idea here is the brother is kind of implanting tons of information into his head so that he can go back in time and use that information to stop the gang. So the very first time that he goes back to middle school time, or back 12 years ago, he's trying to find the two main leaders and keep them from meeting. And that's obviously not as easy as it's going to be because the moment he speaks one of their names, he gets the crap beat out of him. It's like, oh yeah, sure, come meet the boss and do whatever you want kind of thing. No, this is very rough people, and he's dealing with some difficult situations. So my thoughts on it so far, I was kind of put off the moment that he went back to the real time, because this is the point in which we are really dealing with time issues and what that time issue can affect. I guess they're technically trying to get around it by having it to where he only goes back 12 years from the current time, so he can never go back before it and thus prevent what's being done in the future again. So I guess that is kind of protecting itself, but at the same time, you do run the issue of, well, if he does eventually fix the situation, then he never met the guy and they never went back in time. So again, we're having to. This is going to be one of those ones where if you have a huge issue with time, i.e., my brother, you're probably not going to be able to handle this. But I think it's working out fine so far. I just was not. Just the idea of him now working with Naoto in the future and doing this kind of investigative work, it kind of makes it a little more cheesy, but it's not ruining it for me. And I think a lot of my enjoyment so far has been in Takemichi's development, even in these first 2 episodes alone. You are seeing him struggle with the fact that he is a weaker person in the future. He's having to readjust to being more of a rough person in the past. And he's now having to really step up. He's having to show a lot of courage in order to somehow make a name for himself in order to achieve this one goal, which at the current time is to meet one of these 2 future leaders. And so that aspect right there is really solid. Him realizing how good his friends were back in the day, him kind of reacquainting himself with his history, the crap that he went through in his entire life, how he pretty much was under the foot of the Manjigen his entire life, remembering all these things that he's left in the past, and now having to reacquaint himself in order to preserve the life of this girl. I think everything so far is setting up to be a really solid story, and I'm kind of really excited for it. Just that sense of the underdog, the sense of just the crap that he's going through, all that stuff, the betrayal of his emotion, everything is lining up to be a solid story, and I really am excited for what's coming up in the future for it. And again, kind of having my reservations in the idea of the time travel stuff. I don't think it'll be too much of a problem, but it is a concern. I'm afraid at some point it's going to get kind of messy, I guess is the best way to put it. But definitely solid so far. I am looking forward to more. I may do weekly coverage of this one. I'll probably just leave it to, if next week impresses me again, I'll probably continue to do coverage on this particular show. It is difficult because a lot of the shows currently are running on the weekends, so having to space them out with time gap from the episode being aired is a little bit of a concern, but we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. If you did like this episode, definitely let me know in the comments below. Like this video if you did like it, and subscribe if you haven't already. I do appreciate you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and you all take care.